Managing Director of the Trade and Investment Division, Poverty and Development Division, Chief Economist of ESCAP. Dr. Rathnayake led numerous regional cooperation initiatives, revitalizing arguments like APTA and establishing networks such as RTNet and APBF. He advised developing countries, notably Sri Lanka, and promoting corporate social responsibility through projects in education, green development, and SME as Secretary General of BGFA. Prior to the UN, he served in the Sri Lankan Ministry of Finance as a research director for the Presidential Commission on Tariffs and Trade. Additionally, he contributed to academia as a senior lecturer at the University of Auckland. Dr. Ratnayake's expertise spans development economics, international trade, investment, sustainable development, and CSR. As evidenced by his extensive publications and project supervision, Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, currently a member of both the Governing Board and Monetary Policy Board of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. The session will be chaired today by Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, former Secretary General, BIMSTEC, and former Additional Foreign Secretary. And we have the privilege of having panelists, His Excellency Tariq Mid Ariful Islam, High Commissioner of Bangladesh, with us today, and Professor Priyanga Dunusingha, Professor of Economics in the Department of Economics and Head Departments of Information Technology, University of Colombo. We have Dr. Dayanatha Silva, Executive Director of Pathfinder, International Trade Economist with over 30 years of experience in the area of economic development and trade policy and trade facilitation. We also have Ajit Di Pereira, Chair, Executive Secretary of Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Beijing, APTA CCI. So before we commence today's session, I would like to play a small introductory video about the Gamini Korea Foundation and its Sri Lankan Innovators Forum. I hope you enjoy it.
The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, is an initiative of the Gamini Korea Foundation aimed at meaningfully contributing towards resolving the complex economic issues confronting the country today. The Gamini Korea Foundation was founded to take forward the passion of Dr. Gamini Korea to achieve just and equitable economic development in all countries. The late Dr. Gamini Korea was an internationally renowned Sri Lankan economist and an outstanding product of the universities of Cambridge and Oxford. Born on the 4th of November 1925 to Dr. C.V.S. Korea and Freda Korea, sister of Sir John Kotalavala, the then Prime Minister of Ceylon. Dr. Gamini Korea's grandfather and granduncle were the famous freedom fighters from Chiloe, Victor Korea, who was a member of the Legislative Council of Ceylon, and Charles Korea. His uncle, Sir Claude Korea, was at the forefront of Sri Lanka's entry onto the world stage at the independence and for many years thereafter. Gamini Korea was educated at the Royal College Colombo, after which he started his higher education at the University of Ceylon in 1944 before going to study at Corpus Christi College, Cambridge, and Nuffield College, Oxford from 1945 to 52. There he obtained 2 BAs and MAs from the University of Oxford and the University of Cambridge and a DPhil from University of Oxford. He was the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate in economics. He was also the first Sri Lankan to obtain a doctorate from Oxford University in any subject. He was a key member of the Planning Committee for Sri Lanka's first 10-year plan, 1959, which sought to raise economic growth and reduce poverty. Among his numerous achievements was his appointment as the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, where he negotiated the terms of the Lome Convention, a landmark agreement providing development and access to European markets to Africa and the Caribbean. He was an early proponent of the equitable development who worked tirelessly for trade and development in developing countries. The Gamini Korea Foundation provides opportunities for meaningful economic engagement through rigorous multidisciplinary research to promote inclusive and sustainable development. The Gamini Korea Foundation, an autonomous non-profit institution, is committed to making a real and lasting difference in the lives of vulnerable people. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, SLIF, has been conceptualized by Gamini Korea Foundation to bring about change and infuse innovation into the processes of democratic governance and sustainable economic development. It aims to pursue in-depth research and dialogue, focusing on core sectors that need to be addressed and suggest innovative, results-oriented policy strategies to resolve the current economic crisis. The Sri Lanka Innovators Forum will bring together the like-minded thought leaders and industry stakeholders to discuss, debate and agree on pressing issues in a variety of sectors and devise alternative, sustainable economic models, processes and practices. A group of thought leaders who are also subject experts have been assigned to review the issues papers and provide necessary guidance and relevant research material to the respective authors. SLIF will transcend boundaries and barriers and invite specialists from all over the world to contribute their expert views and knowledge to enable Sri Lanka to face its current challenges effectively. 20 identified sectors have been assigned to experts to research and write issues papers on contemporary issues which have an impact on socio-economic development. The discourse will commence with questions that should be raised on good governance and administrative reforms. The other topics are tourism, export-oriented industrial development, macroeconomic policy, poverty reduction, reforming Sri Lanka's state-oriented enterprises, Sri Lanka's electricity and petroleum industry, Sri Lankan food crops, livestock and fisheries, transportation and highways, education, healthcare, shipping and logistics, international trade and investment, subnational policies, environment, women and development, ethnicity and socio-economic development, information technology and foreign policy. The outcome of these issues papers forms a blueprint to be presented to policymakers as a landmark contribution from the Gamini Korea Foundation towards strengthening the economic recovery of Sri Lanka. You are invited to join the Sri Lanka Innovators Forum by logging on to the Gamini Korea website. Fill in the registration form, choose an area of expertise where you would like to share your knowledge, advice and comments on the issues papers posted under each thematic area. Sri Lanka Innovators Forum, beyond the barriers of tradition.
Thank you very much. Now I have the honor and privilege of inviting the chairman of the Gamini Korea Foundation, Dr. Lloyd Fernando, to give the welcome address. Dr. Lloyd, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sohan. Well, I see a very distinguished audience, most of whom I know very well, very close friends of mine. And of course, some asking what happened to the hand. You know, I fell and hit the shoulder on the wall outside the house, not here in Singapore. And there is a fracture. It will take about 6 weeks at least. Nothing can be done. Just go on like this. So anyway, that's short. Let me tell you that I'm privileged to hold this position of Chairman, Gamini Korea Foundation. Dr. Gamini Korea was my first boss long years ago when I returned to Sri Lanka after studies abroad. And he took me into the Ministry of Planning, which was the first Ministry of Planning in Sri Lanka. Dr. Gamini Korea was the secretary of the ministry. And so I grew up there with him later on, and he got me to forget the fact that he was my boss and used to always call me Lloyd. This is Gamini here. And he got on, and I enjoyed a lot, learned a lot from him, met a lot of very interesting people. In fact, that is the most important thing. You learn from each other rather than from books. And I see, and I'm very happy to see such a distinguished crowd here today. I don't want to mention names because I might omit some. And the reason for asking you to come today, like this, we have had so far, I think 18 sessions of this sort, going through what are called issues papers. And what we want to do is to, all these issues papers, after production, we have discussions with people who are engaged in the subject matter. And we want to present them and put them all together. We have set up what is called the Innovators Forum under the Gamini Korea Foundation. That is to look for innovative ideas with regard to the matters that we are trying to come to grips with in Sri Lanka. And I was happy to speak to the ambassador from Bangladesh, because there's a lot we can learn from Bangladesh, you see. There's a lot. And I told him that one of the most distinguished persons that I came to know was Raman Soban from Bangladesh. And we learned a lot by interacting with each other. So what we want to do is, after these things are produced and discussed here, we put them together, and then we will engage the Sri Lankan diaspora, who are in very important positions all over the world. A lot of people are leaving the country at the moment, but at the same time, when they go, they like to be involved with us. So this is one way of engaging them in various fields. You see, we have people mostly in Australia, New Zealand, and then we have in Malaysia, Thailand, and UK, of course, as usual, and USA. So all those people are going to be engaged with us in the discussion of what we are doing here. Now, to cut a long story short, now even today's paper, I had glanced through it and I was very happy reading it. It will take us on a long journey upstream, because once we finish these discussions here today, they'll be put in together, and then we'll get the diaspora engaged in the discourse and see how best we could offer this. This is a time when politicians in our country are all talking of new measures, new approaches for development. So let us share with them. We are a non-partisan organization, you see, but not apolitical. Non-partisan, we don't belong to any particular political party. We don't try to support any political party individually. But we would like all of them to share their thoughts with us, and we will help them, whoever it is. And this is one way of doing it. I don't want to take your time, because now is the time to listen to our friend Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, whom I know for, I don't know, donkey's years now. Can't remember how many years. Okay, Ravi, come, please take over.
Good evening. Excellency, the Bangladesh Ambassador in Sri Lanka, Chairman of Gavini Korea Foundation, Dr. Lloyd Fernando, our distinguished panelists, and also the participants. I'm very pleased to be here today with you. We worked on this project about 1 year. Writing the paper with the support of course, Dr. Lloyd Fernando and Sohan. And so today, what we are going to do is to go through that with you and to get your comments, and so that we can improve that. First of all, I want to thank, of course, Gavini Korea Foundation for doing a lot of work. Of course, this Innovators Forum, I saw a lot of activities, very active, in fact, in number of seminars and forums, and I saw in the papers, and sometimes I participate through online also. Well, I think the organization deserves congratulations. Secondly, of course, my personal thanks to Dr. Lloyd Fernando, of course, my former boss, when I was at Ministry of Finance, National Planning Department. He was Director General at that time. So for connecting me with this group so that I can make a contribution to that. Now, I am sorry, I have to start with a negative point here. I apologize for that, because I have to say that I'm very frustrated with what happened in the past. that I have to say that when you compare with other Asian countries, Sri Lanka is behind at least 2 generations. 2. Now, in fact, maybe another one coming. Now, first generation, as you know, that of course NICs, newly industrialized countries, Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and all these countries, how they change their policies, inward orientation to outward orientation, export-led growth, and so forth. They graduated to, of course, industrial status, and some are, of course, level of developed countries. The second generation, of course, we call them new emerging economies, which includes, of course, Malaysia, Thailand, and a few other countries, and then, of course, Vietnam. So that is that generation, and then I know some other, of course, India. So those are the 2 generations, and now some other countries are emerging. Now, what I want to say is that in 1950s, Sri Lanka or the Ceylon was a rising star, ahead of all these countries I mentioned, East Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia. But then, what happened? They graduated, they took off, but we could not do. To me, there are many reasons, but I would single out 2 things why we fail. 2 things. One is basically we did not introduce proper policies at the appropriate time. So that is one thing. And then also related to that, policy failures. That is one thing. Second one is lack of political leadership, commitment of political leadership. Now, you know, of course, looking at some of the countries that I mentioned, Korea, Malaysia, and all these countries, that there was a leadership consistently pursued export-oriented and outward-oriented policy. So then they were able to use trade as an engine of growth, investment as an engine of growth, but we did not use that. To me, those 2, policy as well as lack of commitment of the leadership, were the major reasons. Now, having said that, let me go here. What I'm going to do here is that basically, with the introduction, I will go to global trade environment to put the subject in context. And also, I will refer a little bit on FDI side, though it is not the main area. And then we'll go to evolution of Sri Lankan trade policy very briefly. I know most of you know what has happened, and then trade performance, linkages between macroeconomic policy and trade. I know we have some macroeconomists here also, including our Dr. Lloyd Fernando also. And then major trade and FDI challenges faced in Sri Lanka. Those are the challenges that we want to address. And then selected recommendation. I have a list of recommendations, kind of a roadmap. If we want to capture the benefit of expanding opportunities, trade and universal opportunities, what we should do in the medium to long term as strategies. So that is what we are going to do. So we will go one by one. Of course, we know about the crisis. I don't need to say it. We all suffered from that. High inflation, of course, prices skyrocketed, and trade deficit, budget deficit, and of course, poverty increased from 12% to 25%, and food shortage. We have to be on the queues and all these things. So there is no. So we know all these things, but then trade became a victim of all these things. So that is the thing. So basically, looking at trade figures, 2019, 12 billion value of exports, and then it became 10 billion. Of course, 2022, 2020, and then recently 2022, I think it is about 13 billion, and then again there is a reduction this 2023 to 12 billion. So we can see that similar pattern is there for FDI also. Compared with other sources of foreign exchange earnings, like say tourism, remittances, of course FDI. Now they perform well as a sources of foreign exchange earning, better than international trade and FDI. So that is the point I want to make. Like even last year, remittances about 3.5 billion. Now it is about nearly 6 billion 2023, and tourism also. Earnings from tourism double this year, about 1.2 billion or so. But international trade, FDI could not do that. So the reason, but there are so many opportunities. I see that crisis as an opportunity rather than a risk. Basically, it is an opportunity for us to think more, think new, going into new areas of production and opportunities. So we'll discuss them. Of course, now there are 4 things I want to mention as a major barriers. The first one is, of course, because of the shortage. I mentioned to you all the shortage of utilities. As a result, the manufacturers cannot produce, and then because there were always power cuts, and they had to reduce the production. Even industrial production went down. Secondly, controls were enacted, imports, raw material. That has to be done because there is no foreign exchange. So therefore, we had to do it. And of course, during pandemic, there are other reasons why they were controlled, because of all the health issues. And then foreign exchange reserves declined from 7.56 billion to 500 million. So this is even not enough for a half month's requirement of the country. Luckily, we have now, of course, 4.2 billion reserves. Controls now, of course, exchange rate, overvalued exchange rate. You know that until 2022, also mid 2022, there was the government was trying to keep it at 200 level, which is overvalued, and creating a high anti-export bias. Now, then global trade environment, we know, of course, COVID-19 made a lot of very high impact on the countries, communities, people. And then there was a loss of international trade also, which of course, $6.2 trillion worth of trade we lost because of the pandemic, and Asia Pacific alone 2.2 billion. And then another trend which is coming now is protectionism. That was there during the pandemic time due to health reasons. Now, and we realize that we can discuss further why it happened, but that is because of pandemic, there were a shortage of, we could not import food because of those restrictions on exports by those exporting countries. And then world is increasingly moving towards regional and bilateral trade agreement. You know, in the world, there are about 450 regional trade agreements. Nearly half of them are in force, and then that is happening. And then rapid growth on global production sharing network. That GVC is now in the world about 75% of global trade take place in the form of production network or global value chain. And then what you call servicification. That means in manufacturing, service content increase. Now, in Asia Pacific, it is about 29%. And then when you take Europe, it is even high. And then trade facilitation agreement is another, it's a new, I think it is a blessing to international trade, because that was a major barrier affecting international trade, including trade. We need to do a lot here. And then increasing green trade. So those are some of the things, some challenges as well as opportunities are there. Just let me give a little bit on green trade. In fact, the green trade market, because the world changed to a green culture. So therefore, everybody looking at green product, consumers as well as producers. Now, it is like massive $8 trillion worth of opportunities are there. So that is where I'm going to argue that may be an area where Sri Lanka can capture, because we have all the necessary new inputs for that. And then, of course, 100 billion for South Asia and like 500 billion for China. China is very much ahead of green trade in terms of solar and various technologies. They are doing really well. I think it's a good opportunity for us to capture part of that. Then, of course, this path, if you're going to go green trade path, it has a lot of challenges. In particular, putting regulatory and policy environment so that we can promote green trade here, which is a big challenge that we have to do. Global trends in FDI very quickly, because as I told you, it doesn't come much on FDI, but it is linked to international trade. Therefore, I want to give a couple of comments on that. So basically what is happening in the world is that FDI moving away from manufacturing to services. That is a big change. So that is why we need to, Sri Lanka has to go for services also. We will discuss that later. Secondly, regional concentration, like ASEAN. There is so much concentrated. They invest each other's country, or it is a regional. But I'm not sure whether it is happening in South Asia, but ASEAN is more effective and more productive, beneficial regional agreement than, unfortunately, South Asian or SAARC. Then market-seeking FDI. So basically, rather than they are locating their industries there is a more trend towards locating in the consumer market. Like, for example, you see that almost all motor vehicles and major products are produced in China, because they came to the bigger market and then basically they are producing that. South-South cooperation, that's also coming, basically developing countries themselves, basically exchanging some FDI. Now, when it comes to Sri Lankan trade policy, we know what happened. Of course, we have a long history. As I mentioned to you, like until 1977, we followed inward orientation. There are some period of openness, but mostly inward orientation and import substitution. That's what has happened. And in fact, when you look back like 60 or 65 years or 1950s in now, mostly our country followed inward orientation and import substitution. I'm not against import substitution, but there are certain qualifications for import substitution to take place, which is, of course, time-bound and target-oriented substitution. But then say only 15, 20 years we were outward-oriented. We are connected with the other world. Though we are connected because of globalization. We cannot do it in isolation. We saw that when you talk about the homegrown policies or whatever, saying that we don't need to connect with other countries, other world. So basically we close our windows and doors and we were trying to produce here everything, and then develop our country. This is not possible at all. So that is what we have seen. That is what we see, which came in the form of crisis. And then, of course, when we started 1977, those reforms, basically liberalization, removal of exchange controls and all these things, it continues some years, and also 1990s also early. Well, then early 2000, we saw the reversal, it's going back. And then they culminated in like last few years with complete prohibition of imports and inward orientation. And then, of course, another milestone I want to mention is that it is called new trade policy. This came in, of course, 2017. It is still in effect. I mean, it is in operation. This is the official trade policy, which has 4 pillars. One is that competitiveness through domestic policy reforms. There are many policy reforms we have been postponing, and that we need to. That is one pillar of national trade policy, basically including rationalization of tariff and para-tariff. Now you know what is happening. Well, I will come to that a little later. And then secondly, market access and trade facilitation, which is a big issue, especially trade facilitation. We are really lagging behind. You must have seen on the papers that how behind we are in terms of trade facilitation. No matter what, you get market access through FTAs, RTAs, say all around the world, but without trade facilitation, without supply side capacity development, we cannot benefit from that. We know we have now 7 agreements, 4 bilateral and 3 regional. But then what we need to have market access there through them. But what we are going to export? So that is the question. Do we have the capacity, or are we developing the capacity? Are we facilitating trade? Like Singapore, Korea, they take few hours to complete one export transaction, while we are taking days. So how we are going to compete in the world market? And then market access. Okay. Third one, macroeconomic balance, policy and institutional coherence. I see a link between those. Trade, macroeconomics, and other policies. We will come to that. So that is the third pillar. And then the fourth pillar is adjustment of firms and people. Because when you do these reforms, what will happen? There will be a huge impact on people, like what we are discussing now, tax policies and all these things. We need to think about it. And then, of course, companies or the business sector. So those are the 4 pillars of this 2017 national trade policy. Current trade policy, well, it is a mess. I should say that we don't know really where it is, right? Now we know that imports ban were introduced 2020, COVID, first due to COVID, and then of course due to shortage of foreign exchange. And then of course, we know that thereafter we have to continue controls, and then government has started relaxing import control as part of the IMF program. IMF program says that we need to gradually reduce all controls, not only import control, but also exchange rate and all other controls. So that is something I think government has been doing. In the past, there was a criteria, but not anymore, but I just mentioned the 4-point criteria for removal or restriction include firstly, absence of domestic substitution. So a group of officials in the Ministry of Finance and other, I think, central bank, they decided what are the goods that do not have substitute. That is one criteria. Second one is items essential for agriculture, fisheries, tourism, and other industries. Third one is percentage of import cost of product, because we have a issue of foreign exchange. And then, of course, it has to get the consent of central bank. So those four criteria were used in the past, but then the latest change, the reform that took place, basically all were, of course, liberalized with high tariff, of course, subject to some licensing, like especially essential food items, and excluding vehicles. So that is there, but there are so many other taxes and controls are there. So it is very difficult to say or outline the nature of tariff structure. In fact, tariff structure, I say that complicated tariff structure and licensing and non-custom charges, which is TBTs, NTBs, non-tariff barriers. There is no consistency, stability, transparency in setting tariff ban. I'm not saying that I cannot criticize this. This has to be done now. All these things has to be done. There is no other option. So basically, I am for this. Basically, if I look at the trade policy, this is what we need to do. Gradually we relax. We need to have high tariff, which can help the revenue of the government, because there is a shortfall of revenue in terms of IMF program. So then, of course, these I think we need to gradually remove, but then after that we need to rationalize them once we come to normal situation. So pattern of trade, basically you will see that imports and export, there is a gap. It is well known. It's all the years from starting from like 2000. I have from 2010, and then we'll see that it is not from 2010. Even before, we had that budget deficit as well as current account deficit. And then here, comparison of trade performance with certain countries. You can again see that some of the countries which are now overtaking Sri Lanka. The last one is basically which is trade as a GDP of in 2010, and second column is again 2022. Not much difference. When you look at it, is a 46.36. After 10 years, it is again 46.52, while other countries took off. And then, of course, total export as a percentage GDP also, they are very much behind many countries. Okay, so this composition of export, the point I want to make is here, it is clear in the paper and also here, I don't want to spend much time here. Composition did not change much. It is our tea, rubber and coconut, and then of course apparel, textile and apparel sector. Not much in other areas. Looking at broad picture, I'm not going at the different small. I know there are certain sectors increase their exports in different, but looking at it, this is 2010. You can just compare with 2022. I don't see much difference here. There are little marginal difference in that. So that is the composition. So that is why we need to diversify. This is why other countries diversify their exports from traditional to new areas, say green business, green trade, or technology intensive, knowledge intensive. So what we are doing we are sitting on the same. We sat on these three crops earlier, and then garment and textile added. That's it. There are some specific situation, but normally that is what happened. And then export destination, again the same story. USA and Europe and few other countries dominated our export. This is 2010. You can just in your papers you will see that there is a 2022, again, there are not much significant difference in terms of destination also. Now, that is something, again, we call it, basically, we need to have diversification of export as well as geographical destination, or the destination of our exports. So that we need to do. Right, major barriers facing Sri Lankan export. Of course, it is tariff and non-tariff barriers. High tariff at the moment, that is okay at the moment. And then there are non-tariff barriers, which include various other processes, procedures, documentation. If any exporters here, you know what I am talking about. And then inadequate infrastructure, logistic, and certain logistics are needed for, say, agriculture. Those facilities are not provided. Poor trade facilitation is a big issue, as I mentioned before. Basically, administrative barriers, custom clearance process, and red tape, and all these things. We can discuss further on these things. Lack of value addition and diversification. So that is a point I already made. That is that. Quality standard compliance, meeting international quality and safety standards, which is a big issue. We may be able to produce, but are they up to the standards that Europe want? That is the problem. You know, what I came across when we do some research, so there are some people who Europe wants, say, one example is that they want cashew nut in full one, right? Then what they did, some company, this is a few years ago, they put some glue, put those pieces together and made it a whole thing and exported. Basically, they had a big market in, I think, Germany or somewhere, basically, completely lost. When you check the sample, that's what is happening. It is a glued cashew nut export. There are many examples like that. We lost because of these, I don't know what you should call, right? Theft or fraud. Right, quality, and then inadequate market information. This is something we have been telling, I think, even like 20 years ago, that exporters should be given information, right information. We need to help. We need to start, we need to help them with SMEs, building their capacities, startups. That we are a developing country, not a developed country. We need to help. We need to help them to stand up. That is how they did it in other countries. Korea or any other country, they did that. But we are not doing it. It is you can say it is a pre-market economy and we are not going to intervene. But developing country, you can't do it. You need to help with a certain, I say always, time-bound, result-oriented. Okay, then limited access to affordable financing options. Now, you know that especially SMEs, what they are going through, they don't have collateral. They go to bank, they don't give money. And then you go to finance company or other places, it is like 2 times, 3 times high interest rate they have to borrow. So how they are going to be competitive? That is also where we have to come in. And then this is a very good example. If you look at these numbers, this is an example of comparison of trade costs of Sri Lanka and India when they export to same countries. Right. Bangladesh, Your Excellency's country. But anyway, okay, Bangladesh is 164 when Sri Lanka export to Bangladesh, but India export to Bangladesh is 120. It is an index of cost. And then say China, 157 our index, and India 99. Similarly, UK, USA, you can see that India's cost index, bilateral cost index, lower than our cost index. So that shows clearly trade cost. What is trade cost? It is basically exporters, what they have to pay, what they have to take in time, maybe utilities, or the time which is the goods are there in the harbor, And all these added together, financing cost and all these costs together, bureaucratic processes, red tape, you have to pay something underhand sometimes. So this includes that also, red tape. So what can we do? So that is what it reflects. This is really pathetic. Okay, now logistic performance index, this is prepared by, of course, World Bank. You said higher the score, it is better. Well, Sri Lanka is somewhere, it's 2.8, and then in the world, 73. There was an improvement. That was Sri Lanka's rank before, I think, 98 or something, so, but then it improved. But we can compare with other countries. Why? That is why I am saying we are really lagging behind 2 generations of countries. Then the Sri Lankan export potential. Now, recently, a few years ago, I did a study looking at 100 products which we export and the other countries like Bangladesh import, right? And then we calculated, there is some methodology there, we can discuss if anybody wants to know. And then those products which we selected at that time with Sri Lanka exported 2 million, right? But then if you remove these NTBs, if you remove these barriers, various barriers, there is a huge discussion if you are going to do that. You know, the potential is 375 million for Bangladesh. Bangladesh, for those products, it is 5.2, but it can be increased to 3.75. And then, of course, India, huge, 11.1, it can be increased to 5.5 million. And then altogether, 19.7 for these whole countries, and that can be increased 1.2 billion if we remove these NTBs, non-tariff barriers. These barriers are not only in other countries, but also here, right? I can explain it later if needed. Sorry. Yeah, so here, now I'm coming to, so we discussed trade, export. One thing I want to say here that when I say trade policy, it is not only export, it also imports. Imports are equally important given that global value chain. Because global value chain, basically, as you know that we are coming there a little bit later. So basically, we are producing, each country producing one particular small thing of a big product. Bangladesh produces another one, right? Another country produces one. So then they put together, and our value addition is small, but we produce more. I may say if it is not a million products, maybe 10 million products. So the small value addition added together, it is beneficial. So that is called global value chain. So therefore, imports are important, though I am not going, in the paper you have that analysis, but I want to focus more on our export side. And then I say that trade cannot go alone. There should be support from complementary policies. One is here, of course, investment policy, because there is a nexus between trade and investment, FDI. But more importantly, macroeconomic policies is exchange rate, interest rate, all these things affect trade. So then we need to have some kind of putting it together, integrating them, some deciding together these policies basically. So then, having said that, let me show this. I have here some of the macro variables just to see how they behave. It is a usual way that you have exports, imports, budget deficit, trade deficit, and all these things are here. Basically, one thing when I look at carefully, I will see that export growth and GDP growth linked together. Basically, GDP growth basically following export growth. That means if you export more, then there will be GDP. Similarly, there is something economists call it twin deficit. Basically, current account deficit and budget deficit, they are linked together. Well, I can see some point, but though it is not consistent. But anyway, you see all these things fluctuating and decreasing, or the deficits are increasing and export declining and so forth. So basically, it is a point that I want to make here is that people say that when we have this crisis, it's a external debt crisis. It is not because of what has happened last 2 years or 3 years. We had that historically. It is there. This is the culmination of what we had. Budget deficit was there, current deficit was there, all through inflation, and all these macro variables are not behaving, or there were problem with economic fundamentals. So what happened in 2019-20, it was a trigger to open this black box. That was there. Basically, there was a trigger coming with this all wrong policies, fixed exchange rate, money printing, and there are many other things that. And as a result, what happened was that it was there, and because of that, it hit that path, and then we are in a crisis. Okay, so current economic environment, it is impact on trade. So I discuss more of these things. Now, in terms of impact, IMF agenda, at the moment, Sri Lankan economic policy is completely driven by IMF agenda, because there is no other alternative, including trade. And then, of course, what we need to do, ensuring political stability. This is a number one to me. Basically, we are in a IMF program. We are continuing with that. Any derailing of this program, we will be entering into even worse situation, because we are reversing all these things. And then social safety nets are needed, gradual relaxation of forex, the foreign exchange control needs to be relaxed, gradual import liberalization, trade facilitation, promotion of remittances, those are sources of foreign exchange. Trade facilitation, support to business, that is very important, which I don't think we are doing enough. Sorry to say that. And then medium to long-term economic growth strategy. We are, at the moment, stabilization. We are trying to stabilize the economy. We have not even thought about the last one. It is so this is something what we need to medium to long-term economic growth strategy. Basically, we need to come out of this situation, come to a certain level, and then go from there. Long-term obstacle facing Sri Lanka in attracting FDIs. So very quickly, so there are a number of things. We will see that naturally, if these are there, people are not coming here. Firstly, the suspension of external debt payment, because that creates, of course, a bad image in the international community about Sri Lanka. And political instability, terrorism, there were some incidents, lack of investment facilitation, which is a huge issue, which that is a major reason why we could not attract as much as we want when it comes to FDI. We are talking about one-stop window or something like that, but the implementation of that, I'm not sure whether it is implementing 100%. Lack of investment facilitation. As with trade, investment is same. You can get the investment. I know there are some investors here, and then basically what happened is that, yeah, it's okay. Then what will happen is some companies go back. Why the facilitation is not good? We can discuss that again. unfriendly business environment, complex tax regime, multiple and inconsistent incentives, and then poor credit rating. All international credit rating agencies rated Sri Lanka at a lower rate because of all these things. But then it will gradually, I'm sure gradually we will achieve that. Even at the moment, there is some signs of improving this rating. High production cost, labor, material, and so forth. So now, in fact, I'm coming to my last couple of slides. Now, these things are significant challenges facing international trade and FDI. This is what I think our organization, our sponsors want me to focus on. What are the major challenges facing and how we are going to address that. So some of these things we already discussed. Adjacent to new global development. These are major, there are so many things happening in the world, we need to adjust. A negative side, of course, slow growth in the US and Europe, and Chinese growth is declining, which is not good for us and many developing countries. Of course, trade wars are there between some tensions between USA and China, geopolitical conflicts, like what is happening in Russia and Ukraine and all these. Positive side, e-commerce, there's a huge area where we can benefit, especially from these COVID-19. We realized that is the area. So countries thought that it is better to use e-commerce than physical transportation. So that is something we need to capture. Green trade, investment, trade in services. Again, world is moving toward trade in services. We need to capture that also, given our human resources. Trade liberalization, we need to have it. After this stabilization is over, we need to think about that. Slow progress in trade facilitation, we need to work on that. Creating new competitive advantage, that is point I mentioned. We always talking about tea, rubber and coconut and apparel recently. We need to create some new. Regional connectivity, it is basically through FTAs and agreements. We can discuss that again. Capturing trade in services, developing supply side capacity. This is a major issue that I mentioned with regard to regional agreement. Without supply side capacity, no point of having market access. We have so many, but market access created, we don't have products. And then global production network, we are really poor in this. While like India, even other countries like Malaysia, Thailand and other countries are doing really well. We are doing some. There are some examples, but I don't want to mention it now given the time. And export-oriented FDI. That is something we should promote. Not that everything that come here, but we can think about that. There are many ways to promote that through our policies and strategies. Okay. Now here, I told you that there is a roadmap. That roadmap is under, it is not only trade, but also macro policy area. I will very quickly go through that, then points we can discuss further. Firstly, integrating trade policy into monetary and fiscal policy decision making, which is not happening now. Because when we are thinking about exchange rate, when we are thinking about interest rate, when we are thinking about macro-related other issues, we need to think about trade. Why we have to think about trade? It is one of the major goals. Export-led growth is a major goal of the economy. That is the way to come out. Otherwise, how we are going to find money? Of course, tourism, there are remittances there. These are limited. But export, that is how those countries, this is the way other countries use. We need to work on it. So therefore, one cannot say that because why only exports, we need to think about exports or trade while we are thinking about macro policy. Because this is a bread and butter, it should be bread and butter of Sri Lanka, given our resources and so. Secondly, ensuring coordinating between countries' fiscal and monetary policy. Then thirdly, review, reform the current taxation system so that export sector will not be disadvantaged. There may be a ways to do it. Okay, so recommendation type 2, trade policy. Again, I'm not going to go through all, just rationalize the trade policy regime by eliminating para-tariff and specific tariff. Review current standard and regulation, exports and import, introduce appropriate amendment. These are related to SPS TBT. SPS is sanitary and phytosanitary measures that we have to abide by, WTO basically, and TBT is technical barriers to trade. What is happening is these are needed, but then countries are using or misusing these things to restrict imports and exports, or they are not properly implemented. Sri Lanka, there are problems with regard to that. The paper I mentioned before, that where I calculated trade potential, I did a detailed analysis on that. What are the barriers? How serious are they? How to remove? And that is another discussion. Negotiate deep and comprehensive trade agreement. This is not just FTAs. FTAs no value now. Those days we are talking about FTA. Now we are talking about comprehensive economic partnerships, cooperation partnership. Luckily, of course, government is going towards that, like ECA, economic and technical cooperation between India and Sri Lanka. That is a comprehensive. And similarly, China, recently Thailand, of course, Singapore. All these are it is a comprehensive. And then, of course, effective implementation of national export strategy. There is a national export strategy, right? We took long time during last regime, our current president time, that there was a huge document. Spent a lot of time on that. They identify all the products that we have competitive advantage and how to promote and all this, and the strategy is identified. It's a very good document. In fact, UNIDO and International Trade and ITC help produce that. We need to implement that. Okay. Recommendation 3, trade policy again. I'm not going to go through all. Please take, paper is available to you. And even this can be available to you, the presentation. Promote industries capable of integrating a global production network. Our GVC, or global value networks, production network, is very low. But we can improve that. There are ways. There are people who did that, basically. Now, one example is that you must have heard about Rohan Tallewath. It is well-known example where he is producing, he started very small, producing, it is sensor switch for seats, both in cars as well as aircraft. He started very small. Now he is producing, I think, 30% or so of the global market, earning huge money. It is a good example of global value chain, how a small SME, one person, he developed. Now, in fact, he is employing 200, 300 people or even more. Okay, and then improve the supply capacity of SMEs, which is, we need to do more. Exchange rate facilitation, right. Trade policy, introduce a trade finance system to address credit access issues. We don't have really a proper system of credit financing for export. There were, I think there were in the past, but that consistently that was not available. So then I think we need to give priority for that, and then strengthening local standard and quality assurance institution and signing mutual recognition agreement, which is of course, it is a series. I'm not going to go to, I have some example. It's the time, and then, of course, FDI policy, identify FDI-led exportable industries, and to come up with some mechanism. Industrial policy, again, supporting the development of export-oriented SME enterprises at the national and provincial level by conducting capacity building programs, and that we can link with the provincial level, like district or provinces, with the, at the moment it is mostly concentrated in Colombo and suburbs, but we can go to other areas. And GVCs, introducing certificate system for potential GVC products, so that is something to support. Say I am exporting, we have potential to do GVC, basically maybe we can, what we can do is to have some kind of certificate system, so then they can sell that identification, that recognition. Regulatory reforms, again I am coming to all this accreditation and additional standards and technical regulation and for non-food export products. So I'm not going to go through them. And the regional and bilateral agreement, we can, I think our panelists are going to go through them. I'm not going to discuss it given the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Without further ado, we'll commence with the panel discussion. I would like to introduce our session chair, Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, former Secretary General, BIMSTEC, and former Additional Foreign Secretary, to take your seat, sir. And Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, I would like you to also take your seat. I would also like to invite the panelists, Excellency Tariq Min MD Ariful Islam, High Commissioner of Bangladesh. Sir, you may take your seat in front. Professor Priyantha Dunusingha, Professor of Economics in the Department of Economics and Head, Department of Information Technology, University of Colombo. Sir, you may also take your seat in front. And Dr. Dayanatha Silva, Executive Director of Pathfinder International Trade Economist with over 30 years of experience. Sir, please take your seat. And Ajit De Pereira, Chair, Executive Secretary of Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Beijing. So you may take your seat and commence the panel discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ravi, for inviting me to chair this session. In fact, we have learned a lot through your presentation, excellent presentation, of course. After spending 35 years in the trade sector, especially with the UN system, I think this is a brilliant presentation. Well, some of these things we have discussed mutually, myself and, well, with Daya for over some years now. But I think we need to engage the deeper discussion on the trade policies, especially the foreign trade policy. As we have seen the crisis, I think the discussion on this matter is much more relevant than any time in Sri Lanka. It's very important. I mean, in fact, Dr. Lloyd Fernandez is also here, who has spent years in developing trade policies throughout his career. Now, today evening we have four distinguished panelists to discuss about your paper. First is my good friend, His Excellency Tariq Islam, High Commissioner for Bangladesh in Colombo, and he has been here even during the crisis. He has seen the crisis which we have gone through for the last two years. Still, we are in the we have not come out from the crisis. Then Professor Priyanga Dunusingha, who is the professor of economics in the Department of Economics in the Colombo University, and Dr. Dayaratna Silva, who was our ambassador to WTO and 30 years experience in development economics and trade policy, and Mr. Ajit Pereira, who is the executive secretary of Asia-Pacific Trade Agreement in Beijing. I think we have an eminently qualified team to discuss the whole issues that you are. I don't think that we can completely analyze and discuss your paper today, but at least there will be some relevant points. Let me start with High Commissioner Slam, because he has another engagement. So first I will request him to see. One area we have seen, I spent 3 years in Bangladesh, more than 3 years, of course, as the Secretary General. I have seen the economic transformation in Bangladesh. Now, to begin with that, now, what is your prescription on the current trade policy vis-a-vis the presentation that Dr. Rathnayake explained to us? Because that during that 3 years I have seen the precise point is that how do we promote export-oriented growth? Now, Dr. Ratnayake's usage is export-oriented FDIs. How did explain to us how Bangladesh succeeded in doing that? But of course, you have a huge challenge, because now you are going to graduate from LDC to the middle-income country, and then you need to be mindful of the middle-income trap. I think Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is very much aware about that. That is why in your presentation you mentioned repeatedly about RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. I will, if I have time, I will narrate something else. Of course, we were trying another shortcut through the BIMSTEC FDI, which did not succeed. Even that time, RCEP was under discussion yet. So, what's your experience and policy prescription from Bangladeshi perspective?
Thank you. Thank you, distinguished moderator. Ambassador Sumit Nakandala, and a great friend of Bangladesh, and also the other panelists. And I also see the chairman of the Gamini Korea Foundation, Dr. Ravi Rathnayake. I also see the executive director of LKI present here, the SLPA chairman, and the Pathfinder executive director, and we haven't met. Okay, so it's a bit intimidating to be in the presence of so many stalwarts, particularly in the field of economics and politics, but I will try to do my best. What I'll do today, I have gone through the very elaborate, comprehensive presentation of Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, and it summarizes the opportunities and challenges that Sri Lanka is currently facing. And I'll try to correlate that with our experience, Bangladesh experience, particularly our experience with foreign direct investment. So my presentation would be basically about what is the status of attracting FDI in Bangladesh, whether it's a success story or not, and what are the major areas where the investment took place. I will cite a few country examples and few areas where we have been very successful in attracting the foreign direct investment, and then I'll explain how it happened and why it happened, And of course, I will also indicate some way forward, the way we are looking at how we want to change the investment regime, how we want to shift from the current regime to the next. So I will start with a few statistics about the current status of FDI in Bangladesh. The annual average FDI from 2017 to 2022 has been $3 billion a year. And year on year, if I go, then in 2021, the FDI quantum was $2.9 billion. In 2022, it was $3.4 billion. And in 2023, it has gone up to $3.48 billion. So despite all the global upheavals and other crises, financial and political crises, we see an upward trajectory in attracting foreign direct investment. And if I look at the countries, the major countries who have been the source of foreign direct investment, those are United States. Their share of foreign direct investment is 18%. The second is China, 13%. Tied with UK, 13%. South Korea, their percentage is 6.8%. Hong Kong, Netherlands, and Singapore, all 6% each. Malaysia, 3.8%. Australia, 3.1%. India, 3.1%. Japan, 2%. So these are the major FDI sending countries to Bangladesh. And as Dr. Ravi Rathnayake has said, there are two ways, there are two major tracks how we have been trying to woo the FDI. One is to support the export-oriented industries, and the other one is our domestic market, catering to the domestic market. Now, I will give you very shortly what has been the trend when it comes to attracting FDI, bringing FDI into Bangladesh. And right after independence, as you are aware, it was we had empty coffers. The economy was literally in shambles. So in the initial days, right after our independence in 1971, we mostly focused on petroleum and gas sector. That is where the majority of the FDI used to come. And then from the 90s, after our economy started, standing on its foot, we shifted from, of course, petroleum and gas. That is still one of the major areas of FDI attraction. But we have very deliberately we have started shifting from manufacturing. From petroleum gas to manufacturing, mostly in the ready-made garment sector, and that is why we are now the second biggest supplier of ready-made garments. And now, after that, then we thought that the ready-made garments, we are too much reliant on ready-made garments, because 85% of our export income comes from ready-made garments, and we should not be putting all the eggs in one basket. So we have started for export diversification, and that is why now our focus. If I tell you how the mix has changed, now the FDI quantum in manufacturing sector is 35%. That is the highest still. Then trade and commerce, we have 22%. Power and gas, it has gone down to the third place, 15%. Services, construction, and others. That is the current mix of the sector-wise FDI we have in our country. Maybe it will be worthwhile to mention a few I have broadly mentioned the countries which are the major FDI sending countries to Bangladesh, but if I could go by a few other examples, that how it has taken place, because we have a concept, we call it, you also have it, we call it export special economic zones. So we have come up with 100 special economic zones spread all across the country where anyone and everyone can invest, both domestic entrepreneurs and foreign entrepreneurs. And we have some dedicated special economic zones for some big economies, like India has taken one economic zone, China has taken one, South Korea has taken one, and Japan has taken one. And in these special economic zones, only companies from these countries can operate, and the other special economic zones are open to any other country. The number of companies, Japanese companies in Bangladesh has tripled over the past 5 years, and the number is now close to 300. And very interestingly, among the Japanese investors, 72% of those who have invested in Bangladesh, they want to expand, and 62% of them want to reinvest. So that is an indication of the investors' confidence in our economy. There are 71 South Korean companies, and very interestingly also, there are more than 100 Sri Lankan companies who have invested in Bangladesh. So these are the country examples, and if I go to the sectoral examples, I will mention a few. This is quite interesting. If I may say that one important, very interesting area is the semiconductor industry, because the current government is now focusing on making Bangladesh one of the hub of semiconductor manufacturing. It may sound very ambitious, but that is taking place in a small way, and it will go a long way, I can tell you. Just to mention some examples, like the TMSC, the great Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturer, they have already invested in a high-tech park in Bangladesh for the semiconductor design. Then we have a Prime Silicon, which is another California-based company, who have established the largest offshore design center in Bangladesh. And when it comes to automobile, that is another big area where the bulk of the FDI came. So Hyundai has a manufacturing facility in Bangladesh. They are building SUVs. Honda is there. Mitsubishi, Proton Saga, Tata, all these automobile giants are having manufacturing facilities in Bangladesh. And then I will go to mobile phone. That is a part of the digital economy that we are looking at. Samsung has its flagship phones being manufactured in Bangladesh. So does Nokia, Symphony, Oppo, and Vivo. These are the Chinese brands, but all big names. And very interestingly, we are also investing much in lithium-ion battery, which powers the electric vehicles. So this is, again, something very, very, very ambitious. And with the support of the Toyota Motor Corporation, some of our local companies and some international companies, they have formed a consortium, and they are opening up a plant where the lithium-ion batteries will be manufactured. At the same time, the electronic vehicles will be manufactured with the support of Toyota. And IT, we are one of the biggest online labor suppliers and have the second largest number of IT freelancers we have, and there are a number of Indian companies working, and we are also working with the Sri Lankan tech companies, and we are coupling the comparative advantage, because you have the expertise, we have the numbers. So we are coupling it to make Bangladesh an attractive destination for investment in the IT industry. And power, energy, and mineral resources, as I've said, it started with the very beginning of, right after our independence, and there are a few big names there. Chevron is there, then GE, General Electric, ExxonMobil, and Accelerate Energy. These are the other three US giants who are planning to go and invest in Bangladesh. Saudi Arabia's engineering dimension, this is a big conglomerate. They are focusing on fertilizer and cement and petrochemicals. There is an aqua power of Saudi Arabia. They are putting up the renewable energy facilities in Bangladesh. Turkish iGas, they are into LPG supply in Bangladesh. And there is China Machinery Engineering Corporation. They are investing in waste to energy power plant. So I would not go to all the details. These are just a few names. These are just the few big names who have come a big way when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment in Bangladesh. Now the other question, how did we make it happen? So a few of the driving factors I would like to share with you. One is the political stability. I think that has been, and the pragmatic political leadership, that has been one key drivers, as Ambassador Nakandal has rightly said. And what that political stability has brought, that is the policy consistency. So in our part of the world, whenever there is a change in government, there are radical changes in the policies. Even the good policies are scrapped. So luckily enough, that has not taken place, and that is why the industry and the economic growth has been so spectacular. Our government's focus has been attracting foreign direct investment, and we are an investment-hungry country as Sri Lanka is. Therefore, all the government policies and plannings have been centered around attracting foreign direct investment. We have a number of investment promotion authorities which come directly under the Prime Minister's office. So Prime Minister herself oversees all these things, so you cannot really mess around when it comes to attracting foreign direct investment. And as a result, we are regarded to be offering one of the best FDI attracting regimes in South Asia. And of course, we came up with a lot of incentives, fiscal and monetary. These you might be knowing, and perhaps you also offer similar incentives to your foreign indirect investors, like there can be 100% foreign ownership. There is full protection from nationalization and expropriation, full repatriation of capital, dividend, and profit. No limit on foreign equity participation, tax exemption, export duty exemption, unrestricted exit policy. These are the many, I think these are quite common. I think any investment-hungry country, they all offer these things. But in our case, we have certain advantages which Sri Lanka may not be having, being an island country and being a smaller economy, that our economy is quite big. We have a big domestic market, so the scope of investment is much more in Bangladesh, which may not be the case with Sri Lanka. Our economic resilience, of course, that is a big attraction, because the investors, they look at the economic prospect, the economic condition of the country, and looking at our GDP growth over the past 15 years, the rise of our per capita income, that is the most encouraging signs for foreign direct investors. Our GDP growth before pandemic, it was 8.1, during pandemic 5.2, and now currently it's 7+. So the investors now understand that our growth has not been an one-off event. It was not a fluke. It was quite consistent and firmly based on sound macroeconomic policy. As I've said, we are a big domestic market, 170 million, whose purchasing power is increasing every passing day. It's a big consumer market. About 37 million people are in the middle income bracket, whose annual per capita income is between $5,000 to $7,000. So the consumption has come up, the consumption and the spending, that is the self-sustaining cycle, because of which the consumer demand has gone up. And as HSBC Global forecast, that Bangladesh will be the 9th largest consumer market in 2030, surpassing UK and Germany, if everything goes on well. The other important thing, attraction, is the democratic dividend. We are having a youth bulge. So more than 60% of the population are working age population. Cheap labor, we all know that is how the garment industry has flourished. Our infrastructure development, that has been a hallmark of the current government. We are having metro rails, nuclear power plants, under river tunnels, expressways, bridges, and whatnot. So that is also an attraction, because it enhances the connectivity, which is one of the most important things the investors will be looking at. Another interesting thing is the trade rivalry. So we have been managing and juggling the big foreign powers in a kind of a balanced way. That is why, since our economic pie is quite big, so US, India, Japan, China, all are looking at the Bangladesh economy, and they want to have a share of our economy, and that is why they want a stable Bangladesh, a policy consistent Bangladesh, and that is what has happened, and so it has taken place. We have other competitive advantages, like look at the trade rivalry that is taking place between US and China. And as a result, there are obvious relocations. And when you relocate, where do you go? You either go to Vietnam, or you go to Laos, or you go to Bangladesh. So these are the alternative business destinations which are helping us in a way. And as the tariff, every country raises their tariff barriers. So we also see that many countries are now relocating from China, and again, many of them are going to Bangladesh. And digitalization of the economy, that is another big plus when it comes to investment. So basically, these are this is not a rocket science. I think these are basic macroeconomic policy, but I think the pragmatism has been there and the focus has been on implementation. That was the key thing. So now I go into the current trend and future. As I've said, we have been shifting our foreign direct investment, the priority areas we have been shifting very deliberately, started with petroleum and gas, then we went into manufacturing. From there, now we are going into other sectors. Now we are going to the digital economy because we see that is the new frontier. We are getting into the high-tech sectors like, as I've said, lithium-ion battery or chip making and renewable energy. So there is a gradual shift. So it has never been stagnant. And therefore, the future of the FDI scenario that we are looking at, our priority will be green industries, high-tech industries, and creative industries. And we see lot of interest from all over the world, including from Sri Lanka. It started with ready-made garments, then Commercial Bank of Ceylon, they started it. Then all the big conglomerates went there. Now even the small size and big size, all the companies, they are showing great interest in going to Bangladesh, not only for exporting products. That is also a big thing. If you can export to a market of 170 million, that can be a win-win situation, but also to avoid the tariff barrier. And every country has their own protectionist approach. To overcome that, having a joint venture operation in Bangladesh. So that is how the scenario is unfolding. I think I have overshot my time, but thank you for the patient hearing.
It was a very much eye-opener. I think many of the audience, they are very well aware about the developments that have taken place in Bangladesh, especially on the export-oriented economy. But what is striking, as you also said, that policy consistency and political pragmatism. Now those are the key words. We have been telling this for last so many years. I think we are repeating the whole thing the last 70 years. Except from up until since 1977. Now, Dr. Rathnayake, I think when you mentioned about the liberalization, first step of liberalization in 1977, I don't think we never had a trade policy. Dr. Lloyd Fernando can say that. I don't think that. We just liberalized the economy, but then we never had the trade policy. I am not aware whether even every 5 years, whether we have reviewed the kind of trade policies that we had. That's another problem. Now, I have one small additional question to you. Now, this Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Corridor, Big B, now which is being funded by and large by the Japanese and the Indian both governments. How do you see, because I've seen the master plan, it's a huge master plan. It's that industrialization will actually affect not only Bangladesh, but also northeast of states of India. Now, how do you see that would affect, because Sri Lanka is also a founding member of BIMSTEC. So what kind of a plan that Bangladesh has on that? That is a simple question, because we are also having some kind of time limitation. But I'm tempted to ask that question because I didn't meet you for the last 6-7 months. If you can, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes, the Big B, our position is very, very simple and clear. Whether it's Big B, whether it's BRI, or whether it's IPS, largely, I mean, some of these are political, and some of them are strategic, some of them are political, strategic, plus, it's an amalgamation. But in our case, we are open to all sorts of approaches, all economic grouping, all economic unions, because we are still a developing country, although we are doing well, but we still have a long way to go. So as long as all these initiatives brings us economic prosperity, we are open to them, but we very deliberately shy away from the strategic or the political part of it. Because as a small economy, a developing economy, we think we need everyone, but not at the expense of the other. So that is our, and be it BIMSTEC, because we are also one of the founding members of the BIMSTEC, and the idea was to connect the South Asia with the Southeast Asia. So BIMSTEC started with a lot of hope, and we are very much into it. But for some reason, the hope with which it started, perhaps it has dissipated a little. You were there, so you know it all well. So for some reason, the regional initiatives, for some reason, we all know what are the reasons. No regional initiative has been successful. But BIMSTEC is still, it's a very hopeful thing, and we will push it, we'll lend it support as much as possible. But as you have rightly said, the big B, we, as I've said, as long as it brings us economic prosperity, economic development, if we can reap the economic benefit out of it, it should not be a problem as it is with the other big two initiatives which are making news for the past years.
Thank you, High Commissioner. Thank you very much for that very pragmatic explanation, and I am very well aware about that. Now, with that, I would like to focus on the WTO. Sri Lanka is a member of WTO, and Dr. Daya Silva has been Sri Lanka's ambassador to WTO sometimes. Now, in the paper, in fact, Dr. Rathnayake repeatedly talked about the trade facilitation. Well, we know that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the WTO trade facilitation is much more bit biased towards the developed countries. That's the explanation we got. I got that. That is why in the BIMSTEC we started our proposal during the 2016 BRICS BIMSTEC Outreach Summit. We proposed from the Secretariat that there should be a BIMSTEC trade facilitation agreement, which is being discussed at the moment. So we did precisely because Bhutan is not a WTO member. We wanted to get Bhutan into our folds. So that's why we decided, okay, we will have a WTO plus trade facilitation. That is one question. Now, how do we promote that trade facilitation, either through WTO process or regional process? Second one is, do you think that multilateral trade regime is failing, or whether the regional trading arrangements are, of course, we have seen mushrooming for the last couple of years, except RCEP. RCEP is also an extension of the ASEAN process. It's not a new thing because it's ASEAN plus. So what do you think that whether Sri Lanka should get benefited from the WTO's involvement and trade facilitation? What should we do? Because in the paper repeatedly Dr. Rathnayake was mentioning about trade facilitation. I think it is very important to discuss trade facilitation in detail. I'll also add one thing. To me, it seems of course, the regional integration process, of course, Bella Balassa's 4-stage theory set aside. If we cannot have a FTA, can we replace FTA by trade facilitation and customs cooperation? Now, there are a couple of mixed questions for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sumit. You asked me series of questions. I'll try to reflect them. First of all, let me thank Gamini Korea Foundation for this excellent opportunity, and Dr. Lloyd Fernando. Thank you very much. His Excellency, thank you. And my dear friends and distinguished friends. I think Ravi made an excellent presentation. He made an excellent diagnosis of Sri Lankan trade policy, its evolution, its gaps, and what were the mistakes and how to correct. And the trade facilitation, importance of green trade, and so I congratulate Ravi did this analysis. I agree with all of that except one thing you say. You like import substitution, subject to one qualification. If the import substitutions is good, if it is efficient import substitution. Otherwise, we will be lagging behind. Now, to answer your question, I have one or two slides. Now, first it's how you asked me the question how Sri Lanka has benefited from the WTO GATT system. Now, Ravi presented the domestic scenario, of course, briefly touch upon the global trading environment. Let me briefly reflect you what happened since the WTO was established. What happened with respect to the tariff level? I'm comparing two types of the tariff level. One is this the simple average MFN applied tariff and the trade weighted average MFN. Since WTO was established over the last 3 decades, both MFN and the trade weighted have drastically reduced from 13.2 to 7.4, this simple average MFN and the trade weighted average. Now, with that, what happened? World trade grew 5 times, from 5,000 billion, 5-fold to today about 24 trillion. This is the world global scenario. The point I am making is, globally, trade environment has been very favorable for getting market access to the WTO. Trade and investment are critical, as Ravi mentioned, drivers for economic growth and poverty alleviation. And the trade policy evolution of Sri Lanka cannot be discussed in isolation without what happened in the WTO. That is the basic picture I want to tell you. Today there are 164 members, and this has created, global scenario has created many opportunities because Sri Lanka has the market access on MFN basis. To what extent we have used, that's a different analysis. Now, to answer your question on the trade facilitation, this agreement came into existence as one of the only Singapore issues, what we call in the WTO, trade and investment competition, and this is the only agreement came out of those Singapore issues. The objective of this agreement was to address what you call the cross-border bottlenecks. These cross-border bottlenecks were hampering as Ravi mentioned, expansion of the trade in terms of the trade cost and time taken. That's the. So whether it is you implement WTO trade facilitation or plus, right, is beneficial for all the countries. Unfortunately, the scenario in Sri Lanka case, we are poorly lagging behind, even the Bangladesh. There is a WTO database. If you can just click where Sri Lanka is. We have categorized into A, B, C, like Ravi has mentioned. Most of the trade facilitation measures, out of 36 measures, to my knowledge, 2/3 of the measures have been put under what we call the category C measures. Category C measures mean what it says is a S&D treatment granted for the developing countries by the developed countries until you acquire the capacity and for which you can get donor assistance, you are not required to do that. That's a kind of, it's a very skillfully negotiated text. I was involved in that negotiation because what we learned from the Uruguay round trade liberalization, it gave a burden for the developing countries to implement them. So therefore, there was a commitment on the part of the developed countries to support. But other countries, unfortunately, except in this region, they have got the support, assistance, and they have put most of this not in this category C category. Sri Lanka neither pushing this donor support and implementation of this one. That's your answer. Extremely sorry. So that's my second question. Then the other one I want to tell you about the WTO, the benefits in terms of, today, though, WTO has been able to reduce the tariff, number of trade dispute, in terms of the consultation and the actual trade dispute is on the rise. It's been increasing. Now today there are about 600 as at 615 consultation trade dispute. Now, if Sri Lanka also is subjected to trade dispute, if we are not a member of the WTO, you cannot get this, what you call the benefits of involving the dispute settlement mechanism. This is a fundamental issue. Are there any trade dispute or other member countries have complained against Sri Lanka? Now, dispute settlement mechanism is prior to the WTO 1995. It was a game between the developed countries, rich man club game. Not the developing countries much involved in it. But since 1995, these dynamics have been changed. There are more disputes among developed countries, between developed and developing countries, even among developing countries. Now, in case of Sri Lanka, I just got it from the WTO website. Now, trade dispute. There are two types I'm focusing on what do you call the subsidies and countervailing measures against Sri Lanka. These are some of the, the cases they have taken up with the WTO. I don't want to go into details. United States, India, our neighbor countries, and in the anti-dumping cases, again, there have been about 10 to 12 cases. The benefits in terms of to answer your question, these European Union, Turkey, India, Pakistan, all these countries have, submitted dumping cases. But this is to the question. If you have any other thing, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, of course, we can't do the justice to this paper within few minutes. So we need more time. Anyway, I think we have time limitation as well. Let me invite Dr. Dunu Singha. Now, we talked about trade. Trade as a important element of engine of growth. Now, how do we do that? I think we have been discussing this for last so many years. I vaguely remember, of course, Dr. Lloyd Fernando will also will agree with me. It was the first time. It was during President Premadasa. I think he implemented basically the export-led industrialization. That's basically RMG sector. That is what we could do. That is what the Bangladesh did for years. Now we failed. I mean, of course, there are pluses and minuses of the whole strategy. How do you see, how do we use the trade, both external and internal trade, both in terms of the entire trade, as the engine of growth? Yes. Can we place this?
Okay, thank you for giving this opportunity. I'm thankful to the Dr. Gamini Korea Foundation, and also very much thankful to Dr. Ravi Rathnayake for the excellent presentation that he basically, in which he discuss number of areas. If I summarize this in a very briefly, he discussed about the environment for exporting, covering firm level environment a little bit, then about the micro environment and macro environment and global environment, how we need, how we can basically create a conducive environment in each of these context in order to promote economic growth. I think he discussed in detail. So that if I pay a little bit on macro environment, that is something that he emphasized a lot. Basically, stress the need for a stable, predictable macroeconomic policies and variable for exporters to, basically stay competitive and enter into the global market, and also stressed the importance of competitive exchange rates. I think in number of studies we have that have looked into the anti-export bias with respect to the exchange rate management. So that basically had a negative impact, I think, in most years in Sri Lanka during the post-liberalization period. And I think His Excellency, the ambassador to Bangladesh ambassador also emphasized this policy coordination and stakeholder collaboration. I think that is also emphasized by Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, which is lacking in a significant manner in Sri Lanka among the key public institutions that involved in promoting exports and promoting investments. If you look into how they basically work, you can clearly see that lack of collaboration, lack of coordination with respect to policy. And by going beyond, I think Dr. Rathnayake emphasized the need for policy coordination, collaboration with respect to fiscal policy, monetary policy, exchange rate policy, trade policy, I think which is very much lacking. Not just the policy, but also the key institutions. Collaboration among them, remain very limited. And financial sector stability also something which is very important, which was mentioned. In addition, Dr. Rathnayake mentioned the investment in infrastructure, trade facilitation, export promotion, skill development and innovation, adaptation to global trends. He specifically mentioned about the green product, and nowadays we discuss about the green investments. I think those are some of the green investments, or the investments funds for green-related projects. I think some basically some keep giving greater attention to how to basically tap the green finance for the development. So these are some of the, I think, areas. I think important areas mentioned by Dr. Ravi Rathnayake, very much important in getting a comprehensive macro environment while pursuing the global environment with trade agreements and through bilateral and regional trade agreement. We certainly need to get the domestic economy or the home in a we have to keep it in order to stay competitive. And more importantly, I think Dr. Rathnayake also mentioned about the microenvironment. Some of the economists may not agree with me terming this as micro, but I think one of the key area of this minimum regulation requirement, I think he mentioned about the trade cost. I think this is one of the area we may, I think what he mentioned about is the supply side bottlenecks to exporting is the biggest issue right now in Sri Lanka. We have, I think the demand side, we have less issues. Now the government aiming at pursuing this now in Thailand, Sri Lanka agreement signed, then with the China, with number of other countries, assuming it seems that demand is the problem. But to me, it is the supply. And even the Dr. Rathnayake mentioned the supply side is the biggest issue right now. In number of regulations, government regulate almost everything with respect to businesses and the lives of the people. And also the rule of law is not maintained. I mean, we are discussing about the export promotion and the competitiveness and all these things. On the ground, rule of law is not properly maintained. Now, Bangladesh case, repeatedly the investors who went to Bangladesh one time, they wanted to stay and expand further. But if you just talk to the foreign investor here in Sri Lanka, they will say, enough. They are not ready to move outside the Western province. That is the reality. Those who have gone to outside the Western province, they are not ready to even stay. They want to simply get back to Western province. These are not my just, assumptions, but what we have revealed through research. Okay, we have basically look into the investment location decisions. What are the determinants of investment location decisions? And it is clearly mentioned that due to number of issues, they are not ready to stay outside the Western province. We are not pro-trade and efficient government agencies. I think the Bangladesh Embassy also mentioned very clearly, investment-hungry country. But if you talk to just go and talk to the divisional secretary or the other key government institutions, officials, in their mind, export promotion or investment promotion, those are not really in their mind. They are more into distributing some of the government welfare and allocating land for the purpose of agriculture, even the land owned by the divisional secretary, but it is entirely for the purpose of, giving land for the survival purpose rather than the development needs. There are classic examples if I can share, but I don't have time because of that. Mostly the lands of the state owned or managed by basically the custodian, but they mainly very much reluctant in releasing them for the purpose of developments, for activities such as setting up export processing zones and setting up even the export processing zone for banana and various other fruits. Rather, they are ready to give it for other various purposes like setting up a Prajasala or something. Okay, so the close collaboration among the public institutions is lacking. Supportive government, non-government organization. If you look at how the exporting or the trade is promoted, the type of local kind of institutional mechanism in other countries. Number of government, non-government, private sector institutions involved to create a conducive environment and supportive mechanism for exporters. Sometimes even the universities providing, translation facilities. Then some of the non-government organization giving other, facilities for to get ready with the technical barriers, get NTBs, and number of supports are given. That is lacking here. You just sign an agreement and stay quite assuming that trade with the Thailand will expand rapidly from the following day. We have not created the conducive environment. So that is something that we need to think. Even the local political leadership is lacking in a big way. Local level political leaders do not recognize the importance of export promotion. Now little bit we have we need to bring dollars and all these things are there, but it is really I think not really happening. And the question what was asked basically linked with the export-led growth hypothesis. I think beyond any doubt we have enough evidence in cross-country setup. We have a number of research studies have found the export-led growth hypothesis is valid for developing country context. Actually, we need to ask whether that is the growth model that we pursued. Rather, we pursued a welfare-oriented growth model, and that is what it got basically, collapsed. That welfare-centric economic model is the one that got basically failed here. That unless we basically give up it and go for a new economic model, we will not be able to basically get out of this situation. If you look at what really drive exports. Now, there are some countries, examples, some of the tables that I provide are the tables appeared in my article in Lankadeepa, so in Sinhala, so I am sure that most of you can read. For example, if you look at the Vietnam case, it clearly you can see in the Vietnam case, it is the foreign direct investments. Clearly the exports, even in the case of Bangladesh, it is foreign direct investment. If you want to promote exports, you have to focus on foreign direct investments. Now here in Sri Lanka, and even if you look at the Costa Rica, now another country which is a very good case, number one, what you call the FDI promotion agency is in Costa Rica. They have, they have privatized export processing zones, and each zone is, competing with others to attract foreign direct investments. Here we have the BUI and we have zones just collect the fees from the companies. They are not doing anything in attracting foreign direct investments. And in addition, I think if you look at countries like Georgia, you can see what matters in basically attracting foreign direct investment, basically to have a conducive environment. When it comes to the institutions, the corruptions and related areas, to have a better political and economic institutions in order to attract investment. So I will be brief. It is very clear we need to concentrate on exports. To get exports, we need the foreign direct investments. How to get it? I think we need, beyond economic reforms, we need political reforms as well. Just said, whatever the institutions that you set up in this environment, I don't think it will work. Even the Costa Rican BOI come and set up here with all the officials, I don't think that we will be able to attract foreign direct investment. We need a comprehensive political and economic reforms, because existing system only cater to a smaller segments who are in politics and economics. They are the people who are benefited from the current system. Unless we reform this comprehensively, we will not be able to basically attract foreign direct investment and promote exports. So the need of the hour is to go for what we call the inclusive political and economic institutions. For that, we need to focus the reforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dunu Singh. Thank you very much. I think we are little bit running out of the time, so I'll immediately request Mr. Ajit Pereira, who is the Executive Secretary of Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Beijing. Now, Mr. Pereira, as Dr. Rathnayake mentioned about a couple of bilateral trade agreements. I mean, of course, the SAFTA is there, and then Indo-Sri Lanka trade agreement, then Pakistan-Sri Lanka, then there is a trade. Of course, these all trade agreements are basically on the trade in goods. He did not discuss. I mean, he mentioned about the comprehensive trade agreements. Now, how do you think that these trade agreements will help promoting Sri Lanka's, of course, this agenda which Dr. Rathnayake was trying to explaining, and he is developing this agenda. Do you think that these trade agreements will be beneficial? Of course, now there is a classical discourse on the trade agreements, but I think these trade agreements are also having their own evolutionary process. I could see that through, especially I could see this through the Belt and Road Initiative. Anyway, this is not the time to discuss with that, but then very briefly, because we need to give some time for the audience for Q&A. Thank you.
You can give me 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay, right. Thank you very much. I must very sincerely thank Dr. Ravi Rathnayake and Dr. Gamini Korea Foundation for inviting me to this important session, and also the chair of the session, Mr. Sumit Nakandala, and also the distinguished panel members. also the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, I am apparently the only private sector executive here, so I believe that I must support Dr. Ravi Ratnayake's excellent presentation, but probably I feel that it needs different packaging, that's all, and the contents will be the same, but I hope that as a private sector executive, I feel that it has to be a little bit differently packaged as well. To reply to the question about how beneficial the trade agreements to Sri Lanka, let me discuss with you some trade dynamics in Asia Pacific region. You look at the countries doing trade, and we look at the volumes, and that will give you some idea about probably, rather than me telling whether it is beneficial or not, probably you may arrive at a decision on your own. That's what I really feel what we have to do. Ladies and gentlemen, why a country will buy some goods from another country? Yes, there is only one reason. That's a major reason. That's if a country sees that the product offer that comes from the other country is very competitive, and if the other country the offer value for money, okay, and definitely there is a chance for the other country to buy it. So in international trade, if any country is there which is engaged in international trade, they should offer globally competitive products and prices. In other words, they should be able to provide or offer value for money, okay, better than their competitors. So that's how I feel from the business point of view, how it will happen. And you look at China and India, everybody knows that those two countries have a lot of geopolitical issues. There are border issues and other political issues, but you just look at the trade volumes, okay, how it's happening. This is as of 2022. When China exports 118 billion worth goods to India, India has exported only 17 billion. That means, in other words, India has exported only 1/10 of what China has exported to India. Okay? Just you think about it. And next one. Then under ISFTA, Sri Lanka and Indian FTA, it's a first one for Sri Lanka and the first baby for India as well. So now what's the situation? India is exporting to us 4 billion worth goods, and Sri Lanka is only just about 800 million. Okay? And if you look at China, Pakistan, the China is exporting the goods worth 23 billion, and Pakistan is exporting about 3.2 billion. If you look at Pakistan, Sri Lanka is exporting goods to the tune of 91 million, and Pakistan is exporting to Sri Lanka to the tune of 400 million. Right? When you analyze this, right, there are trade agreements among all these countries. That's why I had quoted this. You will see that always the trade balance is in favor of the country which can produce globally competitive products. Okay? Whether there is a FTA or not, it doesn't matter. That's my belief when you look at it. Now look at the Sri Lanka, India. India is using only 5% of the tariff lines given by Sri Lanka, but their export volumes are bigger. Why? India can produce globally competitive products which the others cannot produce. That is why we are buying it from India. If the Maldives or Pakistan or Nepal or any other country can come out with the better pricing, then definitely we will buy. Okay? So this is, I think, now you can think of this, right? I believe whether there is a FTA or not. I don't say FTAs are bad. I don't say FTAs has not done anything to the country. I don't say so. But whether there is a FTA or not, when it's come to international trade, if the country can produce the competitive goods, right, which offers the value for money better than our competitors, that country will buy. So that's my thinking, and then you will realize that what is the benefits we have gained from the FTAs. That is my simple answer. I think if there any question,
Thank you. I think we are very grateful to you because you said that you starting with that. You said that you are the only industry, private sector. Yes, that's a very valid point which he made. Now, with that, we will open the session for Q&A. Please, do they have... there is...
Yeah, when you're doing the Q&A session, if you can introduce yourself and ask the question, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a lot of things to say, but Professor Dunathing jumped before me that he said all what I had to say. But I think one other thing we have missed is that we don't have entrepreneurs. We don't have the risk-taking entrepreneurial capacity in this country. So that is one reason why we, with all the enabling environment, we have failed to capitalize that, because we don't have entrepreneurs in this country. They don't take risk. There are risk-averting service providers, but not risk-taking entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Shiranti Kure. I am also a member of the ICC Sri Lanka and a couple of other chamber boards. So just a point to note, in terms of the Bangladesh case study, His Excellency has unfortunately taken leave of us. I think some of the South Asian countries have their own trade and economic development policies. Yes, their GDP per capita rates are high, but sometimes the trickle-down rate of the economic benefits to the population and the repatriation of profits can be seen in the social progress and social quality indexes. So when we do these things, I think what I think we need to do is we need to aggressively develop trade on the one side, but also we must understand that, say for example, our doctor to patient ratio is in comparison with World Health Organization's 1.1, whereas in Bangladesh and a few other countries it's not the case. So we have a much more educated population here, not just beyond literacy rates. So getting that kind of, now even His Excellency alluded to cheap labor. Our countries, the standards are different. We have ratified so many ILO conventions. That policy of manufacturing economy, we have to do it our way, because we have had for years developmental economics, and we have had free education, free health. One thing. Other thing is trade disputes. Again, mediation as an alternative to litigation to promote trade is a very important area, so that dispute resolution becomes much more less painful for all parties. I'm a banker and a finance professional. Other thing is the gentleman said about entrepreneurial spirit. Actually, financial institutions also need to play a huge role in promulgating this trade and manufacturing economy, and not just a service economy. So those are my 3 observations, not really a question. But we should, all those elements need to come together to do justice to the paper that Dr. Rathnayake has done.
Thank you. I think this is very, very relevant. The other thing just came to my mind is that we have just simply forgotten our history. Sri Lanka is traditionally a maritime trading nation. It has been the case. So, yeah.
Any more questions? I think we have, can take about 2 questions.
No more questions, it seems. And then, can I ask panelists and then finally you? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Please cover the both questions. One is the lack of entrepreneurship, and then her question is that more or less integrated approach. Integrated approach, of course. Yeah.
Okay. This is my point of view. One is about the lack of entrepreneurial culture or lack of entrepreneurs. But I think that is debatable because Sri Lanka has quite a lot of entrepreneurs. But one thing I admit as a private sector chamber guy, who Sri Lanka's the rate of progression from small to medium, medium to large, large to extra large is very slow. The 50% of the newly born the business entities will not celebrate the first year birthday, right, for sure. Okay, so that basically there are reasons. But to be very frankly, and we have produced excellent brand of entrepreneurship who have started small and have reached Bangladesh, globally China, India, USA, and there are so many places. But I think the government's basically duty is to enable the environment with a proper policy, the framework and implementation, so that there will be more and more entrepreneurship will come up. But unfortunately, most of the time, sorry to say, like any other South Asian countries, Sri Lankan, all the successive governments, they are interested in creating jobs. What I say is government should not create jobs, but government should create businesses, and businesses in turn create all this employment, everything. So that is my thinking is, it is arguable but debatable, but Sri Lanka has produced excellent brand of entrepreneurs who are doing very well in Sri Lanka and also outside, despite all the issues that they are facing, number one. Number two is, I think, Shiranti's question. Can you basically summarize your question?
Yeah,
okay, right. Okay, I'll come this way. Okay, yeah. I think this is all what I have to say. Sri Lanka lack single-minded business proposition. Sorry to say, since its independence. Okay, I can give 2 examples. Actually, Sri Lanka is the country that started that opened the economy in the whole of the South Asia way back in 1978. India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, nowhere. Okay, and I can remember we managed to build an economy which is basically export oriented, and also we won the reputation among the all other countries as the top class apparel manufacturer, right, for the top end. It's there. Next, in 1980, the late Indian Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, while laying the foundation stone for the Silicon Valley, she said, I want India to be the world office within another 20 years' time. And they envisioned the future, and it became the shared future of every Indian. And they changed all the policies, the political environment and economic structure, everything to achieve that country, to achieve that single-minded business proposition. And then came China. The Deng Xiaoping said, the person who did everything, he said, I want the China to be the world factory, right? And they did a lot of changes. They made a lot of policies, changed policies, and deleted policies, and brought in new policies. And they committed the entire country's resources to achieve that. Right? So unfortunately, right, I believe that Sri Lanka, from my point of view, since 2005 to 2020, we were basically had a rather diluted visions. Like we want Sri Lanka to be the maritime hub, we want Sri Lanka to be the IT hub, then aviation hub, then education hub. How can Sri Lanka, I mean the small country with restricted the resources, to focus on all these hubs, right? I think that was a waste, actually. That was a waste. But at least I believe that, I think I can, from my point of view, I can give you two options. One, Sri Lanka can still come out with a single-minded business proposition that is basically based on the tourism. I mean, we can envision the future, but it has to be a single-minded business proposition. Okay, Sri Lanka will be the best tourist attraction nation within another 10 years' time in the whole of Asia Pacific, right? Then you change all the policies and bring in all the resources and introduce new laws and build the infrastructure to achieve that single-minded proposition. But without being diluted once again to doing that and this and this. This is what I am thinking as a country. I believe that the lack of this single-minded business proposition has basically not given any direction to anybody. I feel that at least in time to come, still we have time, that the country will come out with a single-minded business proposition. So that would basically integrate all the stakeholders into one journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dhonu Singh.
Yeah, I think with respect to the first question, I think about the entrepreneurship, we can broadly, I can broadly agree with that. If you look at the other countries, in particular in the Southeast Asian countries, we can clearly see that I mean the entrepreneurship remain very limited here. Even though we can find various businesses, we find very limited people basically start businesses with new ideas, with something new, and that is partly because of the the training or the recognition in the society, partly social recognition. Many of us want to basically take up jobs, that is also there, or the salaryman. And on the other hand, the larger issue I see this in the competition policy and law. Now, this buying and selling business is more profitable than investing and working hard in manufacturing or in some other work. You can simply buy something and sell at a higher price, keeping a very good profit. Why should you just work hard and try to make profit? So competition policy and the law basically prevented the growth of small and medium scale firms as well. You don't have a level playing field in the economy. So that is also a big issue. And the other one is, I think, I also agree that Sri Lanka must think of at least now think of at least an area where the country can focus initially for the growth and development. I also agree with the previous speaker about the tourism. We can certainly start with this developing the tourism sector, gearing other sectors to achieve that goal, education, health, and various things. Right now, we don't have such a the vision or such a path. So just we hang around here and there and do things in whatever the things that the leaders just feel. I think that is something that we need to get away. And the last point is that I think Dr. Rathnayake also mentioned, and many of us certainly, some of us certainly appreciate this remittance. Actually, the remittance is the curse, as I think. That is one of the reasons why we just, we continue with whatever the problems that we had. We should not, entertain this remittance anymore. If we just focus remittance and send our skilled laborers and labor force away, we will never, achieve a high income development status. It is a cost to the economy. At least now, as a country, we should understand this. It makes us easy to get the foreign exchange, whatever we want, and have our life comfortable, but to the economy, it is a cost.
Thank you very much. Because of the time, Dr. Daya and Dr. Rathnayake will not respond. Yes, we will have that discussion during the tea break, and then. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, the discussion seems to be so interesting. It dragged on. Normally we finish by 6:30. But I want to, you see, the normal form is that we also ask the people in the audience to speak, not only the panelists, but today, time has run out. But we want to consult you. You see, because this is not just a talk shop where we get together and then throw ideas. This is something which is very important for us. This series of discussions that we have on each of the subjects. You see, we had chosen 20 sectors, and we subjected them to this kind of, discourse. Now, I want to get your views, unfortunately not now, but please, when you go back, write to us and let us know your views on these matters. But what I would like to do is, you see, Dr. Ravi Rathnayake has done a wonderful job. Thank you very much, Ravi. This is a very good paper. And as you said, there are lots of ideas which should be taken forward. There are lots of questions that keep on coming up. And you will have a lot of questions, and we should also incorporate them into this, because this is not just a case of writing a paper. And because all this will be made available to the future policymakers in this country. As I said, future, because we are now on the verge of a new, government, and whichever government comes. You see, as I said earlier, we are apolitical. You see, we don't belong to any particular political party. We are not catering to any, but we are offering the opportunity for all political parties to tell us these things rather than just coming and attacking each other. You see, I would like you to cut a long story short. When you go back, please go through Dr. Ravi Ratnayake's paper, which is very useful. And there, I would like you to look at, from page 47 onwards, his conclusions and recommendations. They are well focused, very focused. Take each one of those and say, is it good? Is it good? Can we do these things? How do we proceed on these matters? Or is it irrelevant? Please write to us, because this is going to be subject to further discussions later on. We are going to have a very important discourse with all political parties. We are having a symposium, and some of you may like to come for that. The symposium is open to all political parties in Parliament. And they'll be brought in, and they'll be asked to focus on some of the fundamental issues rather than talking shop on platforms, you see. So given that, I think if you can send us your comments on the issues, I hope, Ravi, you agree with me on what you have stated from page 47 onwards on conclusions and recommendations, then you're better focused. And we will make that available to all and sundry. So thank you very much for being here. It's a great honor to have such a distinguished audience. And also it's an encouragement to us to carry on with this work. Thank you. So,